Okay, let's make a start. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you all. Welcome to the latest Planning Committee meeting. We'll crack on with apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We received apologies from Councillor Allen. Councillor Simpson is substituting. Apologies from Councillor M. Smith. Councillor Steele is substituting. And apologies from Councillor Bridgman.
Thanks ever so much. Welcome to Alison and Daniel, your first visits, I think. So it's good to have you with us here. Do we have any declarations of interest at this stage? Anybody wants to put onto the record? If not, we'll have the usual arrangements that if something crops up that you can't foresee now, but makes itself known later on, just catch my eye and then we'll enter it into the record. Anything on the minutes of the last meeting anybody wants to raise, firstly as a matter of accuracy? No? Are we happy to agree those then? Thanks. Angela, if you'd be kind enough to pass those over, I'd be grateful. I don't have any urgent business myself. We don't have any questions from the public as far as I know.
Not today, Chair. Okay,
thank you. That takes us on then to item number 6, which are the planning applications. And we'll take item 6.1 and 6.2 together because they relate to the same location and the same works. And we're at number 1 Pound Street. And Emily, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is being heard by the Planning Committee because the applicant is an employee of Plymouth City Council. The application property relates to 1 Pound Street, a Grade 2 listed dwelling. The site is a corner plot property which fronts onto Admiralty Street to the east and Pound Street to the north. The site falls within the St Peter and the Waterfront ward of the city and the Stonehouse Peninsula Conservation Area. Here is a satellite view of the site. The application relates to, the corner plot property here, so the yellow one. And then here are some street view photos. The first photo is from the corner between Admiralty Street and Pound Street. The second is the north elevation of the site on Pound Street. And then the third photo is taken from the rear service lane to the south of the property. The proposal is for boundary wall alterations and the installation of a gate, window and door alterations, a pergola and associated works. The application is part retrospective as the pergola has already been installed within the garden of the property. So this is the existing site plan and the proposed site plan. And then we've got the existing north and east elevations and the proposed, and there are no external changes proposed that would be visible from these elevations. And then this is the existing south and west elevations and the proposed, and showing the various alterations there. And then this is the elevation from the garden. So you can see the pergola in the bottom drawing there. This is the existing and proposed lower ground floor plans, the proposed ground floor plan, the existing and proposed ground floor plans, the first floor plans and the second floor plans. So the internal alterations proposed have been considered under the corresponding listed building consent application. I'll come on to that in a second. And then here is the existing and proposed roof plan. And then the applicant has also provided window and door details for those alterations proposed. Officers have assessed the full planning application in terms of its visual impact and the impact on the historic environment, considering the works and materials are acceptable and would not be out of context within the historic streetscape and the conservation area. Comments were received from the Historic Environment Officer, who has raised no in principle objections to the proposal. Officers also considered the proposal would not result in a loss of daylight or outlook to neighbouring properties. Overall, the scheme is considered to accord with planning policy and guidance, and officers have therefore recommended the application for conditional approval. Did you want me to just go straight on to talk about the listed building consent? No problem. It is the same presentation, but I'll just just to make it clear. So yes, this application follows the previous item and is being heard as well because the applicant is an employee of Plymouth City Council. The the application property relates to Pound Street, a Grade 2 listed property. The proposals under this application include alterations to the windows, doors and balcony, works to the boundary wall including the installation of a gate and the installation of a pergola. Internal alterations are also proposed comprising of the installation of a platform lift between the lower ground floor, ground and first floor levels and associated works. The submitted information is the same for this as that I just showed you, but if anyone needs me to go through the plans again, then just let me know. Following initial comments from the Historic Environment Officer, additional information was received to support the application. Upon consideration of this detail, no in-principle concerns have been raised by the Historic Environment Officer, considering the works to be justified and in keeping with the heritage value of the site. Officers therefore consider the proposal to be compliant with the National Planning Policy Framework and the relevant local planning policy and guidance, and recommended that the application is granted conditionally. Thank you, Chair.
Emily, thank you very much. We'll take the debate and comments together, so if anyone has any points to make on either or both of the application, that's absolutely fine. And it's now over to the committee. Is it worth just noting that we had a site visit for this one? If we can enter that into the record, that would be great. So who wants to go first, if anyone? Don't all rush forward at once, please, because we haven't got all day, so we can't take on board everybody. Patrick is coming to the rescue there.
Just to keep the ball rolling. Certainly, you know, I did have an opportunity to go and just look on the outside. Obviously, some of it's in the courtyard. I see nothing whatsoever wrong with both applications, and I'm happy to propose that they be accepted, Chair.
Thanks. Anybody else? Tina.
I would just like to say that I was at the site visit yesterday, and I was actually very impressed with this. I thought it was where the lift in the inside, it was took care of the historic features of the basement, and was well put together. And in fact, generally, I thought it was really good, and I wouldn't mind living there myself. Thanks.
I think you might be straying a bit far there in terms of getting
I don't think they'll be giving up
getting people on board. Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would just like to add that I think some of the things they're doing are clearly improvements. They're replacing the wrong sort of window with timber windows. So I think their whole intention is to improve it. And I sympathise with their desire to have the gateway at the back. And I think it makes the case that that's reasonable in the circumstances.
Thanks. Any more for any more? No, well, I haven't heard a great deal to disagree with. I think it's always worth making sure, although this is an applicant, an applicant who is an employee, which we normally take pretty much on the nod, it's worth, given the historic nature of the building and the fact that it is a listed building consent application, just to go that extra step. And this is, of course, a bit of Plymouth that is pretty much unspoilt, certainly for the south of the city, in terms of surviving the last few decades and generations. And I think what's proposed is appropriate. It is sensitive, not just to the building itself, but to the location in the surrounding streets. And I'm more than happy to support both. We'll need 2 votes on this, so we'll go for item 6.1 first, which is the planning application. So if we could vote on that one, please. Yeah, that's unanimous amongst everybody present, so I'll declare that one granted, and we'll move on to the listed building consent application at 6.2. If we could move to the vote on that, please. And again, I'm happy to declare that one agreed. So thank you very much for that. And that takes us on then to item 6.3, and we're at page 23, and it's Hoe Park, Armada Way, the Hoe. And Emily, whenever you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is being considered by the Planning Committee today as it has been referred by the Service Director for Strategic Planning and Infrastructure for probity reasons and because the application has finely balanced policy issues. This item relates to the Hoe Park located in the St Peter and the Waterfront ward of the city. The application site is a grassed area of the Hoe Park, which is located to the east of Armada Way and to the north of the promenade. The Hoe Park is a Grade 2 listed registered park and garden and is located within the Hoe Conservation Area. The site is surrounded by many listed memorials, monuments and buildings and is within the setting of the Royal Citadel Scheduled Monument. The site is also designated as City Green Space. The proposal is for the siting of an observation wheel on an annual temporary basis. Officers would like to make members aware that an observation wheel is currently in situ on the Hoe in the proposed location. This wheel has been installed using the permitted development rights for the installation of a temporary structure. It is the understanding of officers that the wheel moved onto the site on Thursday the 7th of August and could remain in situ until Monday the 1st of September under its permitted development rights. Here is the site location plan, which shows the precise location where the wheel is proposed to be sited. And then here is a satellite view, which shows the application site too. Here are the existing site plans and perspectives of the Hoe Park. This perspective in the centre of the slide, that faces south towards the waterfront, and then the photo to the right of that is a visualisation sort of a bird's eye view. And then here are the proposed plans and perspectives for the wheel. The wheel is proposed to be sited on the Hoe temporarily on a yearly basis for 4 years between the period of the 1st of March and the 30th of September. The wheel is proposed to measure approximately 34 metres in height and 33 metres in width and will include a platform area. And then here are the proposed elevations of the wheel. A wheel has been sited on the Hoe previously on a temporary basis. Planning history for the site indicates that a 40-metre high wheel was granted consent in 2006. Following this, in 2011, a 6-month consent was granted for a 53-metre high observation wheel, which is shown on the screen here. This consent was extended multiple times, resulting in the wheel being in situ over a 4-year period. This slide shows both the wheel approved in the 2011 application on the left and the currently proposed wheel on the right. Please be aware that these plans aren't to scale as they've been copied into the presentation. You might be able to see, it does look a bit small, sorry. The height previously is labelled kind of on the side there as 53.8 for the wheel that was approved in 2011 and then 34.1 for the wheel currently proposed. Plymouth Hoe is a focal point for the city and is defined by its rich heritage and as a multifunctional area of public green space which serves as a key waterfront destination with various recreation and entertainment provision. The site is highly sensitive, particularly in heritage terms, and the slide on screen shows the location of nationally designated heritage assets close to the wheel's location. By virtue of the scale of the proposal and the location, officers consider that the proposal is finely balanced. The application has received 2 letters of objection. Furthermore, Historic England, the Gardens Trust, the Council's Urban Design and Historic Environment teams, and the Hoe Neighbourhood Forum have raised objections to the application with their primary concerns relating to the location of the wheel and its impact on designated heritage assets. Historic England and Historic Environment have defined the level of harm of the proposal as less than substantial. Following this, an options appraisal has been submitted by the agent. This slide shows the other sites which have been considered for the siting of the wheel before concluding that the proposal brought forward was the most suitable. And this following slide shows some additional visualizations that have been provided by the agent. In light of this information, consultees have maintained their concerns. Officers place substantial weight to the temporary and reversible nature of the wheel, considering this results in the lower end of less than substantial harm. In considering the level of public benefit outlined and its temporary nature, officers consider that this tips the balance in favour of the proposal. The natural infrastructure team have also been consulted on the application and the submitted information and raised no in-principle objections, subject to conditions which officers have agreed and secured. No other concerns have been raised by other consultees on the proposal. Officers consider that the proposal would create a new offering within this established tourist location, supporting the visitor economy. The proposal would not result in any permanent harm to the site or surroundings, and officers are satisfied that, subject to the recommended conditions, that the proposal accords with planning policy and guidance. Therefore, on balance, officers recommend the application for conditional approval. I also have with me the Council's Historic Environment, Urban Design and Natural Infrastructure officers who can answer any specific questions you may have. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. We have one speaker, and that's Councillor Sally Hayden. If you'd like to make your way down, Sally, you're welcome. No stranger to the planning committee. Well, 5 minutes is yours. Would you like to be told when 4 have gone? Okay, whenever you're ready.
There you go. Hope the minutes stopped as well. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the operator. I'd like to start by giving you some background information. We previously had an observation wheel on the Hoe in 2011. This was 53-metre wheel, which is higher than the one you're looking at today. It was situated in the same spot as we're talking about this application. It became a landmark in its own right and well received by the public and local businesses, attracting many visitors per day when it was operational. It's my belief that the operator at the time didn't have to go through all the external surveys to satisfy the requirements. But I'm pleased to say that JCB Events Limited were committed to invest in our city. And as you will see from your paperwork today in front of you, they have carried out a considerable amount of surveys. We all know that the Hoe is the Plymouth jewel in the crown and one of the city's major tourist attractions, as well as a thriving destination in its own right, from where we see a wide range of public activities, from national events with tens of thousands attending to small charity events and pop-ups. But I am fully aware of how important the Hoe is to the people and the history that it holds. But listening to people, especially wheelchair users, that have never had the opportunity to see our beloved National Marine Park and our coastal views from a bird's eye view perspective, where some visitors have had the opportunity to experience the fantastic views of the Plymouth Sound and the surrounding areas while using Smeaton's Tower. Because this is not accessible to wheelchair or people with mobility problems, they've not been able to take that opportunity like everybody else. But the observation wheel is fully DDA compliant with the wheelchair accessible deluxe gondolas, so everybody can enjoy this experience. When we look at other cities such as Torquay, Bristol, Falmouth, they have all accommodated an observation wheel. Even when you go to places like France, with its medieval cities, they have one as well. So why not Plymouth, I would say to you members. JCB Limited are based in the southwest and have operated wheels across the UK for over 10 years. They come highly recommended from other local authorities. And if anyone is concerned about the conditions that will be left when the wheel is de-rigged in September, let me assure you that the operator is committed to returning the site to the same conditions as when they first receive it, including reseeding or replacing grass turf, if required, at no extra cost to the public's purse. Members, as councillors, it's our duty to listen to residents, but always put Plymouth first. If you like myself, have been looking at social media regarding the wheel that's only been up for a couple of days, you will have seen, like I have, so many fantastic comments. Just for a few flavour for you. The lights look so nice at night time. Looks amazing. Fantastic views across Plymouth Sound. Both stunning Cornish coastlines and a brilliant ride.
1 minute remaining.
So I would say to you, you know, I'm lacking on time here because I can talk forever, as you know. But we've had so many
I can assure you, you won't be able to.
so many comments. And can I also say, you can even take your dog on there as well, which you might have seen on local news, which literally was fantastic for Plymouth. It's really important to know that we receive positive comments from businesses and residents as well, as this helps our economic in our hotels, our bed and breakfasts and local businesses, also our trade in our city centre. Chair, committee members, I hope you will consider and support the application so JCB Events Limited can carry on delivering a good service to all the visitors that wish to use the wheel. Thank you, Chair.
Sally, thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to make your way. Terrible. Okay, thanks ever so much, and it's now open to the committee. And Jeremy, I saw first.
Thank you very much, Chair. One of the concerns raised by the Neighbourhood Forum was the displacement of other temporary, I suppose, fairs or attractions. Do we know where the wheel is sited there? If the other attractions need to be in that location, would they be blocked from being on the Hoe, or would they be moved to another location? Is that?
So as part of this application, it only brings forward a proposal for the siting of the wheel. It doesn't take into consideration any of the other temporary installations that come to the Hoe. I'm minded that in a lot of circumstances, they may be there for a temporary period of time which would not require planning permission, and so if they were put elsewhere, then that would be to consider either whether or not that would need planning permission as part of a separate application, or whether they could be there without consent.
Okay, who's Andrea?
Thank you, Chair. I fully support it. I think it's fantastic. What an attraction, you know, for visitors and residents. You know, it must be a panoramic view. And to be honest, I've always said on the Hoe we need more lighting. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. So I fully support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Could we just go back to some of the conditions? Because you did mention, Emily, some of the conditions in terms of making sure that the location is going to be protected in terms of when the wheel goes. So can we just perhaps get some reassurance for people who may have one or two slight concerns, just in terms of how the location will be left?
Yes, no problem. So we have recommended a condition for a landscape ecological management plan. So that's condition 4. So that's to be provided prior to pre-commencement, prior to the commencement of development. And essentially what that will do is outline exactly the features that will need to be managed and how they will be managed, and include, you know, monitoring and remedial measures where necessary. I don't know, we've got Olivia, the Natural Infrastructure Officer, and potentially she'll be able to give you a little bit more detail on that.
Thank you. Yeah, so when the grassland is, well, when the wheel is removed and then there's just the grassland left, it's going to have these remedial measures in place just in case, you know, when the grassland is restored with reseeding or turfing, if it's not to the level that is expected to be, then these measures will mean that we can enforce that they are redone again to make sure the grassland is to the standard that is acceptable.
And that's fully conditioned? Yeah, that's great, thanks. Patrick?
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And, you know, like other members, I fully support the proposal. I think we need to provide additional attractions particularly for visitors to Plymouth, and what better place to attract them to than Plymouth Hoe and the Barbican. So I think with the conditions that are being suggested, it's a very sensible proposal. Just on the reinstatement, so is it expected the condition will have a timescale for the reinstatement? So given the fact that they need to be off the site by the 30th of September, are we saying, or are we likely to say within a period of 4 weeks, 2 weeks, you know, a period, that the site will be reinstated as part of that condition, please?
So I don't think there is a precise time period at the moment that is kind of outlined in the condition. I suppose it's important to note that at the moment the wheel is there under permitted development, and so we can't take into consideration, I suppose, any of the impact at present, as that doesn't require planning permission. The condition has been recommended, I suppose, for when the wheel does require consent to ensure that those measures are implemented.
But notwithstanding that, some of our conditions can take years to implement, and applicants often drag their heels in terms of adhering to conditions. All I would say to you, and it's a matter probably for officers, Chair, but I think a timescale for reinstatement is probably something that does need to be enshrined in the condition, so that it's closely adhered to, and that, you know, the public at large, once the wheel's been removed, have not got an eyesore left, but one that is quickly tidied up. I'm sure it won't be the issue, but I think it would be good to just make sure we dot the I's and cross the T's on the matter. Thank you.
Is there, I mean, it sounds a fair point to me. Is there anything we can do to put timescales in place? Because I'm sure that it's not the intention of the applicants to remove it and leave anything that needs replacing to be left there indefinitely, but I think it would give us the reassurance here today if that could be tightened up in some way. Can someone help us with that, Kate?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The condition for already has a 0.5. It includes the requirement for a preparation of a work schedule to include mowing, seeding and watering. So that would include, in my mind, a time scale when we get that information in. Is that sufficient, or are you asking for a timescale in the condition itself?
Well, I'm happy that whether it's part of the management plan or in the condition, they're interlinked, that there is a timescale, and I'm very happy to leave it to our senior planning officer, Chair, to make sure that's covered. But I just want to put it on the record that I think we just need to make sure that there is a timescale and that everybody knows what's expected of the applicant should they get permission. Thank you.
Again, I'm happy to repeat, it's a fair point, and officers will have heard your comments, and I don't see much dissent or many shaking of heads when you made it, so I think that's going to be taken on board. Before I bring Daniel in, who will be next, I promise, can I just ask about the timings between March and September? So what's the sort of timescale for removing the actual structure that's there? So on the 30th of September, basically on the 1st of October, what will we be expecting it to be gone completely, or is there a transitional stage, or what?
Thank you, Chair. So in condition 3, it refers to the temporary use and reinstatement, and the wording within that condition does say that the wheel shall be removed by the 30th of September and the land restored in accordance with the approved details.
That's helpful, thanks. Daniel, I did promise.
Thank you, Chair. Like most councillors, I wasn't planning to speak on this item, especially given
we all believe you.
Especially as it's my first time on the committee. But Councillor Hayden made some really strong arguments in favour of it. I agree with her completely. The Hoe is the jewel in the crown of Plymouth. It will support tourism. I believe it will enhance the skyline. I think our very own Janner Eye is a really good thing for Plymouth. And if an observation wheel is good enough for Torquay, Bristol, Falmouth, then why not Plymouth? So I definitely support this proposal.
Thanks, Daniel. Anybody? Next, Anne.
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to play a little bit of devil's advocate, if you would indulge me. Personally, I think this is an absolutely brilliant idea, and most people here know when I take my mum out, she's in a wheelchair. Be the first chance for her to go on something like this. It'll be brilliant. But there is always a but. I just want to make sure that we have crossed our T's and dotted our I's. So there have been concerns raised on the historic level with the war memorials that are there, and with the Ho, I've forgotten their full name now, sorry, but the Ho Forum. Have those concerns been addressed back to them in full, in detail? And if it has, I know on the historic side that they are still maintaining their concerns, because it says here they consider that a full assessment has not been undertaken by the applicant. I just want to make sure that all of those things are settled, because whilst I'm in favour of this taking place and this being there, I would hate to see there being any fallout, any antisocial behaviour on to around the monument at perhaps a greater level than what we know already takes place at times. So I'm just seeking some reassurances on that side, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so essentially, so concerns have been raised by consultees such as Historic England, the Historic Environment team. The site is very sensitive because of the proximity to a lot of war memorials, some of which are, grade 1, grade 2 star listed. The comments that have been received define that as a level of less than substantial harm. And so I might bring Kelly Waring, the Historic Environment Officer, in to discuss her thoughts on the scheme, and then perhaps maybe then I could come back and outline how I then weighed that up in come into my recommendation, if that's helpful.
Thank you. The application, to my mind, hasn't gone far enough in dealing with the complexity of the heritage issues on the site. When I spoke with the agent, I tried to impart just how complex this site is and how having such a large object could affect the setting of multiple heritage assets. So here, just by virtue of its size, it has a capacity to affect multiple conservation areas, multiple registered parks and gardens, multiple listed buildings and scheduled monuments. That is actually quite rare for Plymouth, to have such an area so constrained by so many heritage assets. The application did try on it sort of, they came back to us with more heritage information, but it still, to my mind, didn't meet the proportionality tests set out within the National Planning Policy Framework, i.e. the greater the significance of the heritage asset, the more sort of, the more important the asset, the greater weight should be given to its conservation. I've had to do my own assessment, and that does come out at less than substantial harm to all the heritage assets, but particularly the grade 1 listed Naval War Memorial, which has some additional complexity because it has so much intangible cultural heritage significance to our city. However, with the measurement being at less than substantial harm, it has to be then weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, which is then obviously what the planning officer has done, put through the planning process to come out with her assessment. Does that help?
I'm going to come in, Kelly. When you say affect the other assets, what do you mean by that? What is the effect that this has?
The effect is setting for the most part. Obviously, there is physical impact upon the registered park and garden by virtue of its footprint. The majority of of assets would be affected of their setting. So setting...
I'm trying to work out, when you say effect, what is the effect that it has? Because we're not talking about removing any, are we? Removing any war memorial.
No.
So there's no, forgive me, there's no abutting them. We're not putting a structure. So if we're not doing that, are we just talking about aesthetic views? Is that the effect we're talking about?
No, so setting is often confused with aesthetic views, but setting is actually how one appreciates the monument. How is it supposed to be experienced? And here, particularly with the Naval War Memorial, you have a front and back setting. So you have the setting from the sea, but changes within the Second World War created a northern aspect to its setting for it to be viewed along a mud way. So I absolutely understand some confusion with visual aspects, but setting is more of a appreciation and how one experiences the monument, which is an addition to its significance.
That sounds very subjective.
Yes. It
so
is.
That, I just want to get that clear. You know, when we have things like nature issues, you know, should we build on this and what would it do? That's very scientific and therefore very objective. You know, someone agrees with me anyway. I'm just. It seems a matter of opinion, and so what I would ask from there is we had a larger wheel on. Was it the same location, Emily? Is that right? No, there's two. No, just yeah. That's fair. It says two microphones on. That's okay. What lessons did we learn from the previous one? I mean, were there lots of? It was bigger, so were there lots of complaints? Did people object to it? Was the setting of the Naval War Memorial ruined, etc.? It's not often we're in the lucky position of having planning applications that mirror something that was there before in very, very close memory. So what did we learn from that? Was there a lot of harm last time? Because I don't seem to remember that.
If I may, I don't know. I wasn't a historic environment officer at that time. I wasn't involved. But what I can say is that heritage and the way heritage is assessed has changed significantly since 2011. We now have the National Planning Policy Framework, and harm is assessed very differently to as it was in 2011.
Anne, I interrupted your flow. Did you have anything? Go on. Apologies for that.
I can forgive you, Chair. It's not a problem, don't worry. Kelly, thank you for that information. I really appreciate that. So just continuing in that vein, if you don't mind, for you as the heritage person for the council, what else would you want to see done on the heritage side with this application to satisfy your opinion? Am I allowed to ask that?
You can ask, certainly. You're the last person I would dream of stopping asking a question. You know that.
Thank you, Chair. Kelly, sorry.
Thanks. And I'm not quite sure how I ought to answer, really. Can I answer in a way that what I would have liked to have seen done, or is that just not a...
Well, we can only judge on what's in front of us. That's okay. The point. It's not for us to, as with any application, pick and choose. So we can only judge what's there.
Okay.
In terms of the proposal.
Yeah, so in that case, even if the applicant were to go through and provide a full heritage assessment that met the test of the MPPF, they would find that their results still came out as less than substantial harm, and therefore we would still need to weigh that against the public benefit. I would also like to have seen perhaps a more in-depth options appraisal of where, is there anywhere else on the Hoe that could offer the same experience, the same benefits, but perhaps cause less harm to designated heritage assets.
Thank you for indulging me, Chair. Kelly, thank you very much for that. And I wasn't meaning to put you on the spot. I do apologise for that. But I think somewhere in amongst all this, if we have something like this come forward at any point, there's potentially a little bit of a learning curve for us with that, where perhaps maybe on the heritage side we can get applicants to delve in deeper. But yeah, so, and I just wanted to show, I wanted to let anybody that's live streaming this at home, yeah, whoever, wherever, but for them to like perhaps have a little bit of assurance that we haven't just sat here and nodded our heads at something that's very large, that is going next to a major monument of great importance for the city. I didn't want them to be thinking we're putting that through on a nod without having done due diligence towards the heritage side of things. I'm waffling. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Jeremy, did I see your hand up?
Thank you very much, Chair. So I can understand the objections, and I can understand the concerns of the sensitivity of putting a massive wheel next to a monument, but I think it would be inappropriate if you had a garden of remembrance and you slapped a roller coaster through it. That would be there would be concerns there. But I think we have to weigh up the fact that the Hoe is a multifunction site. It's not simply a memorial. It's also got a massive lighthouse on it, and a Lido, and lots of other heritage assets that deal with a variety of uses of the Hoe. And I think, although some of those assets would be incompatible with others, so it would be the Lido fits well with a wheel, and with the sort of wider uses of the Hoe as a green space and a tourist attraction, doesn't fit so well with a war memorial. And I think sort of the multi-use of the proposal and the site does make sense and outweighs the concerns, subjective as they are. They're always going to be subjective, of clashes with some of the heritage assets there. And also the fact that, as you said, this has been there before, and the world did not end. We didn't see lots of objections, and also the permission is only for 4 years. So this is only for 4 consecutive years of siting, and then we'll have a chance, if they want to bring the wheel back after that 4 years, we'll have a chance to assess what sort of impact it's had, and how it has changed, or if it has changed, how the Hoe is viewed by the public and used by the public.
Go on, Anne.
It is my final bit, but something that Jeremy's
Can we have that in writing this time, please?
No, something Jeremy's just said has made me think about. So this is for a 4-year period. If, say, 18 months into it, we find that actually the wheel is perhaps attracting problems and difficulties that is then affecting other heritage sites around it, is there the option for planning officers, if complaints were received, for them to revisit the applications, revisit the permissions at all?
No, so the application would be granted for 4 consecutive years. I suppose if there were issues relating to antisocial behaviour, they would likely fall outside the local planning authority's control. If the planning permission is, being carried out in accordance with its planning conditions, and so they would maybe fall, to other authorities such as, the police or potentially the Public Protection Service, depending on what those concerns were that were raised.
It's a bit like if we were, and we have done in the past, being asked to give permission to a new pub or a new nightclub or something. There's always the potential that bad behaviour of some description may follow, but if there were, antisocial behaviour or violence associated with the pub, you wouldn't say, no, you've got to tear the pub down because you would see what's causing it. Are there any licensing implications? Is it because the landlord's irresponsible, or something along those lines? So I don't think we can be. It's not our job to monitor that. But I mean, this is where I'd hoped we'd have done some research, because we did have a bigger wheel, so therefore attracting potentially more people there certainly within living memory, and certainly within most people's professional memory. So was there a lot of antisocial behaviour attracted to that part of the Hoe when the previous wheel was there? I think that's a genuine bit of information that we could be entitled to.
So I don't have any precise kind of antisocial behaviour, crime rate information from when the wheel was previously cited. During the course of the application, the designing out crime officer was consulted on the scheme. She did note that there could be the chance of increased footfall as a result of the wheel being cited on the Hoe, but has not raised any in principle objections with the proposal.
Thanks. Patrick, did I see your...
Well, thanks, Chair. Obviously, it's a very good debate, but Councillor Gosling, I think, what he said, we've had opportunities in the past of having a big wheel on the Hoe. A number of us are around. I don't ever remember it being a major issue, any concerns particularly being raised. Increased footfall in itself can be to a benefit of public safety, because you're less likely to get antisocial behaviour if there are more people around, if they're generally sort of behaving themselves. And we did have a speaker in favour of the application. That was also to be our Cabinet Member for Community Safety. So one would hope that we would use the powers that exist in the local authority to deal with any potential non-planning outfalls that come from any potential approval from this committee. I think an awful lot's been said, and I'm grateful for the historic officer for a contribution. It's always very difficult, these matters, because you can be very pure in your discipline, which probably wouldn't allow us to go near a lot of historic monuments that we go, because of the fear of endangering their future. But it's going a balance, as other members have said. This is a very active space, one that we should be promoting, and this can only really be good for Plymouth. So I hope very much we can support it and move on. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I saw Tina Toohey, and then we'll move on. I saw Tina and now Paul, and then we'll look to reach a conclusion, if we may. So, Tina.
Right, I just want to make a comment, really. Now, I remember the last wheel, and I have to say that I did find it quite disturbing and out of place when we had the remembrance service. And on one occasion it was turning and it was totally out of place. However, this is not going to happen now, because it's going to be closed at the end of September and remembrance is until the beginning of November. So I see no reason. I think that problem is solved. And otherwise, I think that Councillor Gosling said this is a multi-use place and that the two should live together.
Thanks. Just on that, I take the point about it not, what's proposed in front of us today, not being there on Armistice Day, but that's not to say there won't be other sensitive occasions during the time it is. So can we put something on condition-wise, so that if something crops up that none of us can think of, there might be some sensitive, Armed Forces Day. Sorry, Patrick?
The recent VJ Day.
Yeah, exactly. Something that, without giving an exhaustive list of days and events, because what normally happens then is you have an exhaustive list, and the moment it's agreed, there's another event that no one thought of at the time. Just let's assume that it was going to be there in November. Can we have some sort of condition that says we won't have it we won't allow it to be in operation on that particular day or time of that day? Is there something I just think that sort of covers all bases then.
Certainly I would support probably the timing. So it would have to be around, I suggest, an activity that the city, have to be a civic event on the Hoe for which, a large number of people are expected, and perhaps for the moment of the service or the commemoration, perhaps it's not spinning at that point.
I mean, that's right. Rather than go through and list all the, almost like have a quiz and list all the events we can think of, is there some sort of catch-all we can come up with just to say that if there is something that's sensitive, a remembrance type occasion, that we wouldn't expect the wheel to be in operation for that period of time? Is that doable?
Yes, absolutely. I'm just frantically drafting something. We already have some existing conditions, as we've discussed. So we've got condition 5, which is the environmental management plan. And within that, we have an operational management plan. And I think this agreement would fit quite nicely within an operational management plan. So I would suggest some additional wording, such as agreement with the LPA of any sensitive days that the council would require the wheel to cease operations.
Again, I don't think we need to horse trade wording here. I'm not sensing any opposition to what's been proposed, so I'm happy that we leave it to our officers to go away and draft something into. As I say, there's no conflict there, so I'm happy to do that. Finally, Paul, and then I think we're about ready to wrap things up. So, Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm begrudgingly voting in favour of this because it's good for our economy. I appreciate that, but I'm not a big fan of this wheel. I can see it from where I work. I can see it from where I live. I went to Mount Edgecombe last week. It's still see the blooming thing. It's not pretty, really, but if it's good for the economy. Councillor Hayden said it's the only place you can get a certain view of the Hoe and that. I think there's a big hotel on the Hoe which is disabled friendly. You can look out most directions. So it's not quite as good as people
I think you might need to be very careful in interest-wise and sort of drumming up business for someone you work
I'm just saying, it's not just a Hoe issue. It can be seen from miles away. I live in PL3. I can see it from my landing window. But on the whole, if it's good for the economy, we've got to go for it, haven't we?
Thanks, everyone. And it has been a good debate. And I think Anne made the point that no matter how supportive we are of something, it's always good to ask the in-depth questions and I think the phrase you use, devil's advocate type questions, that's always a good use of our time. Despite appearances, I am old enough to remember the wheel of 10 years ago, and I don't see the great issue myself. The Hoe isn't a museum, and it's not designed to be preserved in aspic. The Hoe today is different from the Hoe of 100 years ago, but I would say just as enjoyable and just as pleasant and just as welcoming for visitors to Plymouth. I think the Hoe in 100 years from now will be the same. It won't look the same as it does today, with or without the wheel, but I think our successors will treat it with the same sensitivity. I'm just looking at the map on page 24, which obviously gives the location, and were the wheel to be sited in, I don't know what the terminology is, but the central part of grass on the left of the map, so literally directly to the north of the War Memorial, then I could see some conflict, because when you look at it down the Abercrombie vista, it would be in the same viewpoint, the same shot, as it were. I think where it is on lower ground actually supports the War Memorial. It doesn't take away the central importance of it, but it just adds as a supporting piece. And I think it's our job to manage change and manage it sensitively and sensibly, and I think that's what we're doing here. I think there would have been noticeable complaints and noticeable anger had there been problems associated with the last one, but there wasn't. This one is actually smaller than the last one, and I think it's going to be, well, it is already because it's there. It's a welcome novel addition to the vista that we've got on the Hoe, and I think the fact that it can be seen from multiple locations is part of the point of this. If you're having something that you paid to go on because of the views across Plymouth and into Cornwall, if you can't see it from those other locations, it rather misses the point, and I would want my money back if that were the case. I'm happy with the conditions that we've sort of strengthened today, and I won't say I look forward to going on because I'm not a heights person, I'm afraid. But we do have two dog owners on the committee who I think will be pleased with the description. We may have more, I don't know, but as I say, I'm happy to support the recommendation, which is to grant conditioning on page 23. That's where I am, and if we could open the voting, I'd be grateful. Again, I think that's everybody who's present, so I'll declare that one carried. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll catch our breath while we go on to item 6.4 at page 45. And we're at 68 Craven Avenue, and we'll just wait for Sam to get ready there. Sam, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. The proposal before members today is a lawful development certificate application to use 68 Craven Avenue, which is currently a C3 dwelling house, as supported living accommodation for up to 3 young people, which would fall within the C2 use class. Lawful development certificate applications are not planning applications, and therefore it is not for members to consider the planning merits of the proposal. Members can merely consider whether or not the proposed change is considered to be lawful, based on the relevant case law and the facts of the case. It needs to be decided whether, on the basis of the information provided, the use sought is lawful within the terms of Section 1922 of the Town and Country Planning Act, which provides that lawfulness is determined by whether planning permission would be required for a change of use. If it is deemed lawful, a certificate should be issued, and the legislation is clear on this. As previously noted, other material planning considerations do not apply. Paragraph 8 of the government's planning practice guidance on lawful development certificates states, views expressed by third parties on the planning merits of the case or on whether the applicant has any private rights to carry out the operation, use or activity in question are irrelevant when determining the application. So as you can see here, 68 Craven Avenue is a mid-terraced property. Just sort of up to Tot Hill Park is just to the south of here, and there's the property there, so fairly standard terrace property of the area. The property itself would not change physically as a result of the proposal. No external changes are proposed and no layout alterations are shown on the plans. The existing 4 bedrooms would remain, with 3 for the young people who would reside at the property and 1 for a member of staff who work shifts on a 24-hour basis with occasional daytime support from a manager. Following the proposal's implementation, the property would still appear as a dwelling in the view of officers. So there's the existing floor plans, and the proposed floor plans, the only difference is on the small bedroom. It says staff sleeping on that one. Apart from that, there's no difference. Changing between classes C3 and C2 is not considered to be permitted development, but despite this, planning permission is only required where a material change of use would occur. The applicant contends that the proposal would not constitute a material change of use and has provided evidence to support this claim. A number of appeal decisions provided come to the view that the change between C3 and C2 in the examples quoted is not a material change of use and therefore could proceed without planning permission. Members need to, therefore, consider whether a material change of use would occur as a result of the proposal. Officers are of the view that one would not. This is because the occupancy levels would be similar to that of how the property would be used if it was a dwelling. The young people and staff would operate similar to a family unit, and the impacts on the area in terms of parking and general activity would be similar to how the property would be if it was used as a dwelling. The young people who live at the site would have been considered suitable to live in such a property, and it is understood that the majority of them would be care leavers, with the property providing support for them on their way to living independently. For a material change of use to occur, it would need to be apparent and demonstrably obvious that the property was being used in a different manner to that of a dwelling, creating out-of-character changes compared to the status quo. This is not considered to be the case here. The appeal decisions provided, alongside many more found by officers, present similar situations to that proposed here, all of which were allowed, with the inspector finding refusal unfounded. Officers sought out dismissed appeals, but the only dismissed appeals found in recent times either related to poor quality applications whereby insufficient information was provided to allow a decision to be reached, or cases where the change would have been a significant intensification of the site, leading to the creation of a more formal care or residential home with sort of significant staffing levels or significant level of occupation. Neither of these situations are considered relevant here. Given that the proposed use would be similar to that of the existing dwelling, the property's lawful use, officers are of the view that a lawful development certificate should be issued. The council's legal representative has also confirmed such following a review of the application. As such, it is recommended that members agree to issue a lawful development certificate for the proposed C2 use. Thanks.
Sam, thank you very much indeed. Our first speaker is Councillor Chris Cudderhay. Chris, if you'd like to make your way down, you're welcome to join us too. 5 minutes will be yours. We'd like to be told when only one is left. Okay. If you're not, we won't. But
Thank you.
In your own time.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. As you know, I'm a councillor for Sutton Mount Gould Ward, or one of the councillors for Sutton Mount Gould Ward. I've been approached by some residents in and around Craven Avenue, thank you, who are concerned about this application. And I note what Sam describes about whether this is a material change of use of the property. I think he accepts from what he's just said that it's...
Chris, could you perhaps move your microphone a little bit? Thanks.
Yeah. I think from what Sam said, he accepts that it's a change of use from a dwelling house, a C3, to a C2, which is a residential institution. For those who aren't familiar, Craven Avenue is a residential street of terraced properties. You've seen the image of number 68. The residents who've approached me are concerned about the impact on their local community. That area close to Tot Hill Road and Tot Hill Avenue, as Sam has outlined, has a lot of HMOs and student accommodation. They're concerned that by its nature that changes some of their area, and sometimes that leads to a very quick turnover of residents and occupiers, sometimes less so, but they imagine that's going to be repeated here. As far as the legal position is concerned, I hear what Sam says, and I've read some of the documents in relation to it. And I just want to highlight for the chair and the committee this issue of material change of use. I think we've all probably picked up on the Epping decision by the High Court earlier this week. They refer to material change of use in that judgment and highlight that that's always a matter of fact or degree. And obviously, I think you'll all understand that that means you assess a case on its individual merits, really, and therefore I'd caution you against trying to gather or consider that there might be support from other decisions where other local authorities or even this local authority has agreed to a change of use of this kind, because I think it is important that you look at this on the merits. I hear what Sam says about poor quality applications, cases where there would be a significant intensification of use of a site, a change that might be out of character with the status quo, and I think all of that is taken on board by the residents who've contacted me and would be broadly the position that they would take about this property. I just want to add a couple of points. The residents who've contacted me highlight the neighbourhood plan, the Plymouth plan of 2014 to 2034. about the importance of development of safe and sustainable neighbourhoods, their views being sought and listened to and feeling empowered. And I note that this is just an application for a lawful use. But clearly your decision is whether or not this needs to go to a full planning process, and they would say that it ought to because of the fundamental change that would be made to the property. The residents also highlight an interesting aspect to this application, which is that the application form refers to the owner of the property being a company called SSR Properties and Holdings. The application for the change of use is made by a company called the Keys Group, who are a specialist care provider for children, and I think Sam has referred to children leaving care. The directors of that company are two individuals, or rather were two individuals, Hazel and Stephen Hannigan. I think Hazel Hannigan's no longer a director, but Hazel Hannigan has put in a letter of support that says my family and I live quite close by. We believe it would be a great family home environment for these children to live in. Heaven knows we need more placements for vulnerable people in the vulnerable children in the city. But she hasn't indicated on that submission that she's a former director of the company that owns the property. That does call into question
1 minute remaining.
Whether all of those who've supported the application might be friends or associates of the Hannigans. The application, as I say, is made by the Keys Group. They're a private children's care provider. It's not surprising that their website would go on and say that they provide care and education services for children and young people with complex needs, emotional and behavioural difficulties, who sometimes display challenging behaviour. Now, if you allow this application, then clearly that would be the kind of child that the Keys Group would look to place there. They do say within their documents in support of the application that they're relocating an existing home of this kind, but they don't provide information about why it's being located, what the problems may have been at the previous one, what the reason for the relocation is, where that was. None of that's explained. The original application proposed 4 young people in the property. Now it says 3. That change is not explained. The class of C2, if I could just briefly, just a couple of very quick points.
Come to the end of the sentence, please, Chris.
Yes, it's a settled community of long-term residents, and they would like it to stay that way.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Our second speaker is Mr. Mike Spencer. Looking around the crowded chamber to try and identify you. There you are. If you'd like to come and make your way down.
Sorry, let me move and you can...
You're very welcome, Mr. Spencer. 5 minutes will be yours too. Would you like to be told when 4 have gone?
Yes, please.
The clock will start when you do.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Mike Spencer and I'm an Operations Director at Keys Group, speaking in support of this application. I'm based out of Plymouth and I've worked in this area for 18 years. Firstly, we welcome the positive comments provided in the committee report and the supportive comments from some local residents. We support the officer's recommendation to issue a positive certificate that concurs with the council's legal team, who confirm a lawful certificate should be issued. Keys Group has developed an excellent working relationship with Plymouth Children's Services, providing support for young people across the city. This application proposal would provide supported accommodation for 3 young people, providing them with ongoing support for the next stage of their journey towards independent living. We specialise in providing high-quality, bespoke group homes for young people aged 16 to 18. We will not admit individuals who are over 18 years old. As part of the planning process, before young people move into our homes, we work closely with Plymouth and other placing authorities to ensure young people are ready for semi-independence. We discuss and plan how young people are currently being supported to develop independent living skills such as money management or advising on further education. We ensure that young people are ready for higher levels of independence. For context, we have 2 existing homes within Plymouth providing supported accommodation where we currently support 7 children, all from Plymouth. We have a long history of successfully working with this council. You will note that a letter of support from the commissioning officer was included as part of this application submitted for the home. Additionally, for clarity, these services are regulated by Ofsted, having been registered since May 2024, governed by the supported accommodation regulations from 2023. As part of the referral process and due diligence, a thorough risk screening is completed. Essential information is requested regarding young people's needs and their own risks. It is important at the referral stage that risks and needs are understood to ensure that our homes can provide support within the remit of supported accommodation and relevant Ofsted legislation. Placement planning meetings take place prior to any young person entering our homes. It is essential that adequate time is afforded to plan the placement and how the young person will be supported. An impact risk assessment and subsequent matching processes are undertaken that carefully consider what is best for the young person. We consider how young people placed together may have a positive impact on each other's lives and the benefit of their sharing accommodation with young people they have positive things in common with. Support will be provided by one member of staff working on a rota basis, providing 24/7 cover, inclusive of sleeping duties. There is a small committed staff team who support our services within Plymouth. The registered and deputy managers are very involved and visible, one of which will be present during weekdays alongside staff offering management oversight and support alongside on-call duties. We're committed to working with and integrating our young people into the local community, working hard to establish positive relationships. The occupation of this property would not be dissimilar to the occupation by a family of 3 children with 1 or 2 parents. The only difference is that the support staff would not be living at the property on a permanent basis. The proposed use as supported accommodation is entirely appropriate in a residential area. No physical changes are required to the property. In summary, our support would build self-esteem, confidence and resilience, support engagement in education, training or employment, empower young people to understand their rights and entitlements, promote personal safety, develop support networks that have longevity beyond care, support young people to be financially independent and budget effectively.
1 minute remaining.
Overcome loneliness and social isolation, help young people to integrate, develop socially and enjoy life, and housing young people locally within a registered service who else otherwise may live at some distance from the city, impacting their identity and local opportunities. We ask that committee members support this proposal. This setting would provide these young people with the support they need to enhance their next steps in life and achieve the best future that they deserve. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Spence, thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to make your way back, we're grateful. Before we start, I just want us to understand and make sure I understand as well the perimeters of what we're being asked to decide, because as Sam started with, this isn't a planning application, and if our officers can stop me if I step out of line with anything I say, I'd be grateful. But earlier on, we were asked to consider the suitability of changes to a listed building in Stonehouse versus the options for not agreeing that, and the suitability of a wheel on the Hoe versus the arguments against having a wheel on the Hoe. And obviously those trigger different opinions quite clearly. We're not being asked, I think, to look at the suitability of what Mr. Spencer was describing, although he spoke very eloquently. We're being asked whether or not, and I say this advisedly, no matter how good or bad the proposal might be, whether or not it needs planning permission or not, and which is a much drier way of, is that correct? Perhaps Natalie, as our lawyer, if you can just help us with that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you're correct. It's basically the issue of an LDC is looking solely at the narrow remit of lawfulness, and that involves whether there has been a material change of use in relation to a proposed use. So you'll have to look at the evidence provided by the applicant and the information provided in Sam's report to assess whether you think there has been a material change of use. And it is that question and that question alone that you are determining. Planning merits are not relevant. So things like planning policy, weighing up policy against the proposal, that isn't relevant either. It's purely the question of whether you think there has been a material change of use based on the evidence.
So are you saying, Sam, that you are in agreement that there's been a change from C3 to C2? Is that, have I got you correct there?
Well, I mean, I suppose we should say there would be. It's, as far as I'm aware, the actual use hasn't commenced. So I suppose just for members' clarity, there's like the phrase change of use in planning kind of can have multiple meanings. I suppose generally, when we describe something as a change of use in a planning application, it means something is going from one use class to another use class, and that would require planning permission. There is a change of use class here in this instance, going from C3, which is like a standard dwelling house, to C2, which is residential institution, which covers like a multitude of different uses. But the law, you can go between different use classes without the need for planning permission if it's not considered that the change of use is material, and that would mean that, and you generally would need to be kind of substantially different to what was there before. You'd have to sort of notice the difference. It would have to sort of lead to out of character changes to the area, which in my view would not be the case here, given the sort of occupancy. I suppose also I should point out that we're very much tied to what is in the description on the report. So it's not saying go to any kind of C2 use. It's specifically what's set out here. So supported living accommodation for 3 young people. So we're not assessing a broad, because C2 could cover other things, such as like more formal care homes, for example. So it's only relevant for what is specifically set out in the description.
If we were to approve the recommendation, would what you've just explained be explained in or gone into in detail in the certificate that you would then be, or the planning authority?
So a certificate would be issued for literally. So the certificate would be issued, and it would only be relevant for literally what's out here. It doesn't then give permission for anything beyond that. If it then if then, say for example, it was being used for something else, then that certificate doesn't cover that.
That's helpful. Anne was first. And I've got a few other people, but Anne.
Ooh, I'm back in the place again. Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Councillor Cuddihy and Mr Spencer for their presentations as well. I suppose a lot of what I was going to clarify and bring up, you've already addressed, Chair, with Natalie and Sam. I suppose for me, what it boils down to is it was a home for a family, and now it is going to be a property run by a business. So in one way, the outward appearance is going to remain the same, but it's gone from being a residential property to a commercial property, even though it's providing much, much needed residential move-on accommodation for our young people. And we all know there's not enough of that in the city anyway. So is that then classed as a material change of use or not?
Not in that sense, no. So, I mean, there's a number of, as part of the research for this, there's a number of appeal decisions which basically look at the very, very similar schemes, and that would, the fact that it was sort of leased by by an operator to provide this service in and of itself wouldn't constitute the material change of use. It's more how you would perceive that property.
So the ownership, I appreciate what you say about, I presume, I mean, again, it's an assumption that the family who were there previously owned it in some way are now, if everything is agreed, are looking to change. The ownership is irrelevant. So if the family themselves, just hypothetically, wanted not to sell to Mr. Spencer's organisation, but wanted to run a care leavers service themselves, your consideration would be exactly the same. So the ownership doesn't matter. Is that, which we're always told in our training is pretty important.
Yeah, so again, as long as it tied into what was specifically being applied for, yeah.
Okay, Anne, is that okay? Thanks. Daniel was next.
Thank you, Chair. So the question that we're looking at, from my understanding, is this material change in use. It's previously been a home for private residents, and now the idea is to have care experienced young people. So my position is pretty basic. We all deserve to have a home, and as councillors, we're all corporate parents. We have a legal responsibility to all the care experienced and young people who are in the care system in Plymouth. Our job is to ask those questions of, what would I want for this young person, this child, if it was my child? Now, I don't have children, but I know there's a number of councillors around this table that do. And the question you'd be presumably asking yourself is, my child, if they were, say, 16, 17, 18, where would I want them to live? Presumably with a roof over your head. Because if you actually look at the statistics, so I sit on the corporate parenting group, so this is quite an interesting and important issue. Young people who are care experienced are disproportionately homeless. Young people who are care experienced are disproportionately in places in the criminal justice system, in prison, partly because of the lack of stability. So residential homes like this provide that stability for those young people to have a base to build their lives from when they come out of the care system. So when I think, is this a material change? I think no, because it's providing a home instead of maybe just for a nuclear family or whatever. It's providing a home for young people who really need it. So from my perspective, from the corporate parenting board, I think this is a proposal that we should support. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Daniel. Angela was next.
Thank you, Chair. Well, essentially my points are similar to Daniel's and lead on from that. The point being that as a city council, we are all corporate parents. And I think therefore, as members of the planning committee, we have to think of the coherence that means. What, as members of this committee, does it mean to the council's commitment to being corporate parents? And as Daniel said, it's an extreme acute need at the moment. But I think that the coherence of the policy is equally important, and I think we should take a lead based to some extent on the reassurances that Mr. Spencer has put before us. I think that, as I say, it becomes a coherent policy that we should facilitate the council and all those working to give children a home, as Daniel has spoken.
Thanks, Angela. Jeremy.
Bring this back to planning issues. Can I ask if this would count as a change in so for an HMO, if you're changed from a single residence, family residence to a HMO, that would require planning permission. So presumably we've changed from a single family residence here to 3 occupants. Does that count now as a HMO, or are the doors not locked, so they're not a HMO?
No, so an HMO falls under a different use class, which is C4, and in most cases, the change between a single dwelling and an HMO is permitted development. So it wouldn't require planning. A small HMO of up to 6 people would not require planning permission. We have removed that right in parts of Plymouth so that it does require planning permission.
Is that what we refer to as Article 4?
Article 4, yes, exactly. But this wouldn't. This use wouldn't fall under that use class. It wouldn't kind of fall under the remit of having an HMO license or something like that, because it's sort of managed by staff. It's I suppose maybe which might be helpful for for members of the committee to sort of consider is if this was adults receiving care and receiving sort of support, that would still fall within the parameters of the C3 dwelling use. There's a part of the C3 which allows for that, because adults are considered, even if they're receiving care, they can form their own household. Children cannot form a household on them by themselves, and because the carers, although there's 24-hour care, none of them live at the property permanently. So therefore it falls under that legislation, falls under the C2 use. And there would be no sort of, I suppose, is it your concern that it could then become an HMO? Is that your concern? Or your question, sorry?
It's really around sort of material change in use, you know, and trying to refer it to things in which we have experience on this committee, which is, you know, so follow up, does this area fall under section 4, which requires...
It will, yes. Yeah, it does fall under the Article 4 area. I suppose the fact that it's a permitted development right in, you know, most cases to change from C3 to C4 almost removes that argument. Like, you don't need to consider that, I suppose, because it's allowed under the legislation. And the fact that we've removed that right means that, you know, we have to have a planning application for those applications. In this instance, though, I suppose it might be different if we were considering, say, for example, you know, this is a 4-bedroom property. Say, for example, the applicant was looking to say, you know, have, I don't know, 8 people here. You know, maybe we would be recommending something different, but because it aligns with the size of the property as it is, it's sort of suitable. It's similar in occupation to, you know, what you would expect. Then in our view, it's not a material change of use.
As a follow-up, Chair, I mean, what's interesting, as you say, is that it wouldn't be required to have a change of use if it wasn't children in residence. So presumably, my previous questions, which informs my next question, which is, say you had a family living in a residence, and they one of them was elderly and had to bring in a full-time carer to that residence to look after them, a nurse or something, or a care assistant. That wouldn't require a change of use, would it?
No.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think that answers all my questions.
Thanks, Jeremy. Patrick.
Thank you,
after that, I'm sorry to cut you off, Patrick. I think we're hopefully ready to reach a conclusion, but I don't want to cut you off.
Thank you very much. Well, I think this is you know, one of the vagaries of the planning system, because the way I look at it, you know, it's a residential dwelling for which 3 youngsters who sadly won't have parental responsibility looking after them have got obviously those from the organisation substituting as parents. So I don't see from a proposal that there is any change to an existing use as a dwelling. And I think it is important and behoving on all of us, and I welcome the fact that, you know, one of the ward councillors has come to speak. But we certainly, Councillor Stevens and I, over the years, have seen a number of applications where presumptions are made by the community that actually proposals will be more substantial and significant than they ever materialise to be when they've gone through the planning committee. And I think it's important that, you know, community cohesion is brought together and residents appreciate the fact that the organisation making the application have been present today. There's a track record of the way they operate the properties in the city. And I think it is important, if the planning committee are to support the officer's recommendation today, that there's bridge building between the wider community in this street and the property itself, because many of the fears and perceptions that potentially are coming from residents, I hope very much are unfounded, because ultimately it's still a residential property and it will be run as a residential property. There is no change other than the fact that there will be a company providing the oversight of the occupants. So, as other members have said, it is important that facilities like this one are provided in the city, and certainly I can't see on the face of it any change of use, and therefore I'd be happy with the proposal as set out by the officers. Thank you.
Patrick, thanks. From my perspective, certainly as chair, I've always sought to be as open as I can with ward councillors being able to refer all planning, and I totally appreciate this isn't a planning application, but all applications under the planning legislation that we have to deal with into the committee, and nothing is going to make me change that. So I'll certainly defend other councillors' rights to do exactly what Councillor Cudahy has done with this item. He's totally within his rights, and that mustn't change. But dealing with lawful development certificates is a double-edged sword, because, as I tried to make clearer in my opening question, we're not looking at the pros and cons of a scheme. As I said earlier, you know, you can argue the pros of a wheel on the hoe, and you can look at the arguments against it. You can look at the arguments in favour of having houses in Wilmot Gardens in Honnicknoll, and the arguments against it. And that's normally what we're doing, what we're used to grappling with. Here, we're looking at whether or not something actually needs planning permission, and we need to divorce ourselves, I think, from the merits of what Mr. Spencer and his organisation are looking at, and any concerns that Councillor Cudahy and his local residents might have about that. This is about, is the use change, because it is a change of use in terms of there won't be one family unit living there with, I don't know, parents, kids, whatever. There will be a change. Is that change big enough to merit the need for a planning application? And everything we've heard to me says no, it's not. It's close enough. A to B is close enough that you wouldn't need planning permission to get there. That's how I see it. I totally endorse everything that Daniel and others have said in terms of the need for this sort of facility, and it's absolutely fantastic that children from Plymouth aren't going to be forced to get the care and support they need away from Plymouth, and long may that continue. That's a really good step. But purely in terms of the very dry question, does this proposal need planning permission? The answer to that from me is no, and therefore I'm very happy to agree that we issue the lawful certificate as recommended by Sam on page 45. That's where I am. So if we can have the vote, please, I'd be grateful. I will declare that agreed that we do issue that. Thank you very much, and thanks for bearing. I think this is the first lawful development certificate many committee members will have had to deal with. Patrick very helpfully gave a comment on my age in the last comments, but it's something that we might have to look at in the future. So thank you, everybody there. Item number 7 is the list of applications since last we met. Is there anything there anybody wants to raise or ask about? No, so we'll note those. And item number 8 is the appeal decisions. Katie, is there anything that you want to bring to our attention appeal-wise since we last met?
No, Chair.
No? All right, thank you. I don't think we've got any exempt business, so I'll say thank you very much. I do apologise that we all missed Angela's birthday, which was early this week. So if we can all wish her a happy birthday a few days late, and we'll see you next time around. Thanks ever so much.